let Reb Moshe know early enough.
Okay.
But Baruch Hashem, they to help. We have
We
the
love
regulars.
these surprises.
You love the surprises. Okay, so this Maimon.
We
didn't expect you back to fish right.
Yeah, every year is different. So I didn't finish learning this Maimon, so it's a little bit exciting in a way. I don't know where the Rebbe is taking us. Yeah.
No, this is Yotzela
It was said Mem Zayin. It was Muga Tovshin Nun, I think.
But this
Yeah,
one I have is
Tovshin Nun.
Lamed Hey.
So where I put the Chut Hashani? Go to the Chut Hashani. Still not. Must be over here. Okay, Kufayin Zayin, page Kufayin Vav.
Kuf Ayin Vav. Okay.
Kufayin Vav.
Kuf Ayin
It's
Vav.
in, no, it's different. It's a
yours
different
is
print.
different.
It's a different print. In Malukah Dalet, it's page Shin Mem Zayin. The Maimon is set up Shin Mem Zayin, and it's on page Shin Mem Zayin. Okay, so the beginning of the Maimon, it's a little difficult in the sense that he's talking about lofty concepts. But let's see. I don't know where the Maimon ends. We'll find out. So, the Hayu Yomim Tovim Lisal Chamisha Asar B'Av K'Yom HaKippurim. The Mishnah says that there were no greater Yomim Tovim by the Yidden as Chamisha Asar B'Av, which is tonight. Tonight is Chamisha Asar B'Av and Yom Kippur. Or maybe Avram Rashab Nishma said in there, but Rashab Ma'amar Yom Avayr in Chamisha Asar B'Av. In his Maimon, where he explains the content, the meaning of Chamisha Asar B'Av, he brings down from Kabbalah, from the Talmudim of the Arizal, the Disa b'Priyetz Chaim Shayom Tov the Tesvav B'Av Husha'az Hushlemus Mili Alavana. What's the whole big Yom Tov of Chamisha Asar B'Av? That on the 15th day of the month, the moon is complete. In Gemara it says many other things that happened on Chamisha Asar B'Av. Yom Shekol Boy Meisei Midbar, right? The Gzeira that the Eibishter was grazing on the Yidden by the Meraglim that they should all pass away in the Midbar. So they finished passing away on Tisha B'Av, and every year on the day of Tisha B'Av, they would, I think we're going to see it soon in the Pnim, they would bury a cave for themselves. They would go in and they would pass away. Those who were the age of 40, nobody passed away younger than 40. And on that year, they all dug the cave, and they went in, and the next day they woke up. They were still alive. They had trouble. So they got, it reminds me of a story. My great uncle was a Taira Yid by the name of Rabbi Yosef Bilanitsky. He was born probably somewhere in the 1920s, and in the middle of the war, he was in Samarkand.
He buried my grandparents.
In Samarkand. Okay, so there you go. So he was a Yid. He was Kulei Lev. He was such a Herzliya person, and there were terrible plagues going around. There was typhus, I think it was, and typhus is very catchy.
And also hunger. People
and pasha from hunger, and people would pasha pass away in the street. And first of all, people were afraid to approach them because they were afraid it was a catchy disease, it was contagious. And second of all, people were too busy. There was pasha no time, and he pasha dedicated himself to Mesiras Nefesh, amongst the other things that he was doing, and he would pasha bury people. Moshe says that his grandparents were buried by Rabbi Yosef. He was the son of Rabbi Solnef Bilanitsky. So to bury somebody, you need a caver, right? That's also a malacha. So he would go and dig the caver. The thing is, it says that if there's a caver that's unused and was left open on overnight, you can't bury somebody in it. I think Shadim come and occupy it. Or whatever the story is, you cannot use it. In Russia, if you spend time digging a cave, and there's many people, unfortunately, dying, you're not giving up on the cave. They did Kever Achim sooner or later.
So there were so many.
There were so many. So either at this time they weren't doing Kever Achim, or the story is with the Kever Achim. Anyways, but the story is so what's the Eitzah? The Eitzah is that overnight you sleep in the cave. If somebody sleeps in the cave, a live person sleeps in the cave, and then no unwanted inhabitants take it over, then you could use it to bury somebody. The thing is, he had two. He had two. You can't sleep in two, so he needed somebody. So I believe the story is the Schoenberg Drizzen. He was a young bacher then. He was looking for somebody. So he found Schoenberg Drizzen, a young bacher, and he told him, "I'm going to sleep in one. You're going to sleep in the other." I told him, "Shug, it's daytime. I'm not doing this. I'm terrified." So he said, "Look, we're going to take a gartel, and I'll tie it from me to you. It's going to be tied to both of us. And if you're afraid, you'll pull the gartel, and I'll pull back, and you'll feel my company. You won't be afraid anymore." Okay, so he agreed. So they both go in, and Schoenberg starts getting scared. So he yanks at the gartel, ain't there's nobody else. He starts pulling more. He starts getting terrified. I say the guy died in the cave. Well, he couldn't. He jumps out. He goes to check. He sees he's sleeping, without any worries. Anyways, so, but that's what the Yidden did in the Midbar. Every year on Tisha B'Av, they would go into the cave and they would pass away. Then in the final year, they went in, and the people they were already weren't Yitzim L'Tzava. They weren't 20 years old yet, and they didn't pass away. But they were so used to it that that the said it is going to the cave and you pass away, that they weren't sure. They thought maybe they made a mistake and they weren't looking at the moon properly, and it wasn't yet the full moon. But when it came the day of Chamisha Asar B'Av, so then they saw that the moon was full, and they knew they couldn't have possibly been making a mistake, and then it became a Yom Tov. And there were many other things. So even though Kol Meis Midbar happened on Tisha B'Av, but since we'll see later in the Maimer, Chamisha Asar B'Av was the day that they knew that it finished. And many other things. The Shvatim became permitted to marry one another. Shevet Binyamin, after the Yidden made a cherem against them, that they can't marry into the Yidden, where the cherem was allowed, was permitted, and several other things. So what does the Pietz Chaim say? He says that what's the Yom Tov of Chamisha Asar B'Av? It's that the moon became full. All of these other things that's mentioned in the Gemara, so the Rebbe says in the brackets, "Ve'inyanim sheiru b'chamisha asar b'av hamnuim b'Gemara him k'meteitzos me'inyanim ha'ikri shel yom zeh shleimus milei halavana." All of the good things that happen on Chamisha Asar B'Av are actually merely a result, a consequence, an outcome of the primary inyan of this day, which is that it's the day when the moon is full. Asks the Rebbe on the 15th day of every moon, of every month, you have a full moon. Nevertheless, you don't find that on this special day when the moon is full, you don't find a special Yom Tov besides for Chamisha Asar B'Av and Tesvav V'Nisan and Tesvav V'Tishrei, right? Pesach and Sukkot. And even more than that, it's not understood. The Mishnah says there were no Yomim Tovim as great as Chamisha Asar B'Av and Yom Kippur. So if the lashon of the Mishnah is that there was nothing greater. It's even greater than the Yom Tovim of Pesach and Sukkot. Even though these Yom Tovim are also on the 15th day of the month. So what makes the Yom Tov so great, like the Pietz Chaim says, is that it's on the 15th day of the month. The Yom Tovim of Pesach and Sukkot, which are also on the 15th day of the month, should have also been equally great. Shaph explains it as follows. The primary advantage, the mila of the fulfillment or of the completion of the moon on the 15th day of Chodesh Av is that it comes after a chesaron, after a great lacking. It sounds like of the moon also, not only of Tisha B'Av Kipshuti, but also of the moon. And the shleimus that comes after missing something, when you reach a state of being complete, but this completeness came after you were lacking. So this completeness, it's greater. It's greater than a regular state of completeness. As it's known, the rule too, when you have an aliyah and when you have a yeridah, that the aliyah that comes after a yeridah is a higher aliyah than the yeridah, than the person was at, or than the situation was before the yeridah. And the greater the yeridah, the elevation is, the ascent is greater. Right? It's the general idea that's explained is that by the Eibishter everything is set out exactly. Right? Nothing is circumstantial. Nothing is as it had to be. And if by the Eibishter we say that there's going to be a Yerida in order to bring about an Aliyah, then you can't end up back in the same place where you were before. If you started off at 100 and then you went down to 50 and you came back to 100, then what's the point of the Yerida? You're back to where you were already at 100. So why did you have to go down? So therefore you must say that when you go back to completeness, you don't go to 100. You end up at 200. You end up at a much higher Madrega. That's the explanation that's given in Chassidus why we must say that after a Yeridah, the Aliyah is much higher than it was before. How high is the Aliyah? The level of the Aliyah is commensurate with the level of the Yeridah. The lower the situation is, the higher you end up later. the greatest Yerida, there is no greater Yerida than Tisha B'Av. So the Shleimus Halavana on the 15th day of Av comes after the greatest Yerida. Since it comes after the greatest Yerida, so therefore the Shleimus of Chamisha Asar B'Av is the highest Shleimus that there is. It's another quality of Shleimus that doesn't exist in any other month. And therefore, the main time when we have this Maila of that the Levana is complete is in the 15th day of Av, the descent of the Levana, and so to the descent of the Yidden, which are who are compared to the Levana, is a tremendous Yidden. And therefore the ascent of the Levana, and so to the ascent of the Yidden, which comes after the descent of Tisha B'Av, is a very, very great aliyah. It's not like the regular aliyah that you have on the 15th day of every month. So to summarize, Eis Aleph, the Rebbe Rashab explains to us that Chamisha Asar B'Av is a special day. Why? Because then the moon is complete after the greatest Yerida. It's the aliyah that comes after the greatest Yerida, and therefore it's the greatest aliyah. And everything else that we celebrate about Chamisha Asar B'Av is an outcome as a result of the fact that this day is very special in that we have this aliyah of the Milli of the Levana after the Chesaron of Tisha B'Av. Okay. There adds an explanation. The Indian Hanal Shahayamtiv to Tesvav of Hulafisha Azhiya the Tisha B'Av. This idea that the Rebbe Rashab explains in his Maimer, that the reason why the aliyah of Tesvav B'Av is so high is because it comes after the descent of Tisha B'Av. It's also hinted in one of the ideas of Chamisha Asar B'Av. One of the things that we celebrate on Chamisha Asar B'Av is as follows. The very, very first good thing that we celebrate that occurred on the 15th day of Av, that was the day on which the people, the Deit HaMidbar, on whom the Gzeira was applied, that they have to pass away, it ended. That was the day when it ended. Like we explained before, and I think that was going to bring it on the Pnim soon, that it ended on Tisha B'Av, but they did not know about it until the 15th day of the month. The Indian Mesa Midbar Kasher and Tisha B'Av. The fact that the Yidden passed away is connected to the day of Tisha B'Av. What's the connection with the day of Tisha B'Av with the fact that the Yidden were passing away in the Midbar? It was on the day of Tisha B'Av that the Eibishter made this Gzeira on the people who were in the Midbar that they won't go into Eretz Yisrael and therefore they're going to pass away in the Midbar. And also the fulfillment of the Gzeira was every year on the day of Tisha B'Av. Every day of Tisha B'Av of the last 39 years when the Yidden were in the desert, they would prepare their graves. And like I explained before, they would go into it and they would pass away. If so, the Yom Tov of Chamisha Asar B'Av that they stopped passing away is an aliyah that came after a Yerid of Tisha B'Av. So we see that it's not that the Yerida and the aliyah in the very first thing that we celebrate on the 15th day of Av correspond to each other. It's the aliyah out of the Yerida. The Rebbe Rashab said that what's the whole Maila of Chamisha Asar B'Av, that it's the shleimus of the Levana after the chesaron of the Levana that you have on Tisha B'Av. So the Rebbe says you see this idea, and also the Nigla in Yonim that we celebrate on Chamisha Asar B'Av, that the fact that they stopped passing away was an aliyah after the passing away which occurred on Tisha B'Av. So it was the aliyah that came after the Yerid of Tisha B'Av. The same idea, like the Rebbe Rashab explains, when you get to the shleimus halavana. And now the Rebbe takes it also to another concept. Also, when you get to the primary Yerid, what's the primary thing that we mourn on the day of Tisha B'Av? That this is the day on which the first Beis HaMikdash and the second Beis HaMikdash were destroyed, and not only that they were destroyed, and also that the Gzeira for the Churban of the Batei Mikdash was on Tisha B'Av also on the first year when they were in the Midbar. I'm not familiar with the historical details of that, but that's when the Gzeira, the Eibishter made for what's going to happen way later in the future, was on the day of Tisha B'Av as well. Here, I'm sorry, the Rebbe explains it. Because that was the day when the Eibishter made a Gzeira on the generation of the Midbar that they will not enter Eretz Yisrael. And both of the Gzeiras, side the Gzeira on the Beis HaMikdash and side the Gzeira on the Deit HaMidbar that they should not enter Eretz Yisrael, was because of the same Chet, was because of Chet HaMiraglim. So in short, the day of Tisha B'Av is Sai the day of the Churbanis of the Beis Hamikdash, and Sai the day of the Gzeira on the Churban of the Beis Hamikdash.
So they're separated by 39 years. The Spectrum happened at the very beginning. While this...
No, the Gzeira happened right in the beginning also. The celebration.
Yeah, but I'm saying is the fact that the Yidden, they said they're the 40-year-olds, they're not going to sell, that finally happened towards the end of the 40 years.
No, it started right away.
Right, but
It completed 39 years.
So it was really a 39-year span.
It was a 39-year span, yeah. But it wasn't a break. It was ongoing during those 39 years. So he says like this.
That's it.
So the Rebbe says that what's the primary Yerid of Tisha B'Av? That the Churban of the Batei Mikdash. The Rebbe says that therefore the Ali of Chamish Asar B'Av is what? Is the Binyan Beis Hamikdash. Shebetesvav B'Av Meir Mein Hagilui de Lasid. Then on Chamish Asar B'Av you have a Gilui of Lasid Love. And I see in the heart it's not a Chiddush of the Rebbe. It's already Amar from the Rebbe before the Rebbe. But as Meir also, there's a Chassidus explains that there's a Inyan Chamish Asar B'Av that then is Meir the Gilui of Lasid. Sheikari Binyan Beis Hamikdash Shlishi, which the Iker Inyan of the Binyan of the day of Chamish Asar B'Av is when the Beis Hamikdash Shlishi and of the Gula Mitzvah Shlema is when the Beis Hamikdash Shlishi will be rebuilt. Which this is which this is going back up after the fall of the Churban of the first Beis Hamikdash and of the second Beis Hamikdash. So in Eis Beis, the Rebbe asks that you also see in the Inyanim of Tisha B'Av, Sai in the Inyan of Kol Meisei Midbar, that it was an Aliyah which came after the Yerid of Tisha B'Av, and also in the Inyan of the Churban of the Beis Hamikdash, that Chamish Asar B'Av is the Aliyah that comes after the Yerid. Right, because in Tisha B'Av was the Churban of the Beis Hamikdash, and on Chamish Asar B'Av you have the Ha'ara of the Gili of La'asid when we will rebuild the Beis Hamikdash Hashlishi. Okay. Umamshich b'hamaimer, the Rebbe Shab continues in his Maimer Bir Hashaychus. The Tesvav B'Av the Beis Hamikdash Hashlishi. The Rebbe Shab explains in his Maimer the connection between the 15th day of the month. The connection between the 15th day of the month to the Beis Hamikdash Hashlishi. Because the Rebbe Rashab explained in his Maimer that it's connected to the Beis Hamikdash Hashlishi. Chamish Asar B'Av you have Me'en Agili of La'asid, which the Ikar of the Gili of La'asid will be the Binyan of the Beis Hamikdash. And this is connected with the 15th day of the month. So what's the connection between the 15th day of the month and the Beis Hamikdash Hashlishi? So the Rebbe Rashab explains as follows. Shel Asid Love Yiyu Gam Vavke B'Chinas Yudke. In Shem HaVaya, you have the letters Yudke are the first two letters, and Vavke are the second two letters. And these are two completely different madrigas. And one is represented by the fact that it's a Yud and a Hey, and Vavke is represented that it's a Vav and a Hey. However, La'asud Lavai, Vavke is also going to be Yudke, like it says in the Pasuk, on that day it will be, but the Aishis of here is Yudke, not Yudke, Vavke, but rather Yudke. Hashem Echad Shmei Echad. So he says Yudke. So the Madrega that's in the time of Golus, or even in the time of the Beis Hamikdash, is the inyan of Vavke will be Yudke. The Kimin Sheinik Tzachitzenim Himibchinas Vavke Zun. Since where do the Chitzenim get their nourishment, their sustenance to exist? Is from the Madregas of Vavke, from the Madregas of Yudke. The Chitzenim, the Klippus, can't get any sustenance. It's only from the lower levels of Vavke that they can get sustenance. But when Mashiach is going to come, Vavke is going to also be Yudke. So Mashiach Yudke on the other hand, from Yudke, which this is Chachma and Binah, from there it's impossible for the Chitzenim, for the Klippus, to gain sustenance, and therefore they can't exist. So La'asid Lava, when Zun, when the Midas and Malchus are going to be just like Yudke, are going to be like Chachma and Binah, so therefore Le'yeshaychos Churban v'Galus. It won't be possible for there to be a Churban and a Galus. It's very issues of Sfiris and Shemus, but the basic idea is that why is there a Churban Beis Hamikdash? Because there's either, if you want to go to the source, because the Yidden Chas Hashem do Averis, or because the Goyim destroy the Beis Hamikdash. In any event, it's connected to Klippus, to the Sitra Achra. What's going to be when Mashiach is going to come? When Mashiach is going to come, the Sitra Achra won't be able to get any chayas. Why won't it be able to get any chayes? Because it's going to be Yi, it's going to be Yudke, Yudke. The Stracher gets its chayes from Vavke, from Midas and Malchus. When Mashiach is going to come, they're not going to be able to get their chayes. Therefore, they won't be Sitracher, they won't be Averis, they won't be Goyim, they won't be a Churban Beis HaMikdash. So therefore, the third Beis HaMikdash will exist forever and there won't be any more Gullus. That's one explanation. Moisif Bahamaimer, the Rashab adds a second explanation. Shemachilukim ben Yudke, which is Ava, which is Avaim Chachman bin Levavke Zun Zavinukva, which is the Midas and Malchus, who the Ava hin train rein the Lomis Parshin Vizun Zivugum Hurakli Prakim. Ava are called in Kabbalah, they're called two friends that never separate from each other. In other words, Chachman bin are always in a state of union. They are always together. Masha'enkein, the Midas and Malchus aren't always joined. They don't always come together. It's only on occasion, I believe it may be on Shabbos, I don't remember, but it's only on occasion that Zon Malchus join come together. When Mashiach is going to come, when Vavke will be like Yudke, Gam Vavke is Yivugam B'Tmidus. So even Vavke, their union will be constant. And it's because of this constant union between Zah and Malchus, between Vav and Hey, that the Beis HaMikdash will be a binyan nitzchi, a complete an eternal Beis HaMikdash. So the Rebbe Rashab brings two explanations on this. That Dafka on the 15th day, you have a gilui of the Beis HaMikdash HaShlishi. One explanation is because the Beis HaMikdash HaShlishi, its idea is that it's an eternal Beis HaMikdash. And the idea of why is it an eternal Beis HaMikdash? Because there will no longer be any Sitra'acha, there will no longer be Klippus and Chitzainim. And that's connected with Yudke. When the day when Zah and Malchus, which is the place where the Klippus get their sustenance from, will no longer be able to get their sustenance from there because Vavke will become Yudke, and therefore you won't have Klippus to destroy the Beis HaMikdash. And the second explanation has to do with Yichudim. He says that Av v'Eim, Yudke, they're constantly in union, they're constantly joined. Masha'en Kein Vavke, Midas and Malchus are not constantly joined, and that's the cause for a Churban, or it could lead later on to a Churban. When Mashiach is going to come, Vavke is going to be just like Yudke, and they're going to be in constant union. Midas and Malchus are going to be in constant union in Atzilus, and therefore there won't be any destruction and any Gullus. And in the brackets, the Rebbe explains in a very geschmack way the difference between the two explanations. So it says like this: in addition to the fact that in the Beis HaMikdash, when Mashiach comes, it's not going to be possible for it to be destroyed. Why? Because there aren't going to be any chitzainim. There isn't going to be any klippus. And therefore the Beis HaMikdash can't be destroyed. The only thing that could destroy the Beis HaMikdash is these chitzainim. So what's the reason why it's not destroyed? Not because the Beis HaMikdash itself is not shaykh to be destroyed, but rather because there is nothing to destroy the Beis HaMikdash. That's why it's not shaykh for it to be destroyed. So that's in the first explanation. When Vavke will be like Yudke, so there are no chitzainim, so now it's not shaykh for the Beis HaMikdash to be destroyed, because there are no chitzainim. However, in the second explanation, that Vavke is just like Yudke in the sense that they're in constant union, so then that means that the Beis HaMikdash itself, it's impossible for it to be destroyed. Chitzainim, no chitzainim, the Beis HaMikdash is not a thing that can be destroyed, period. The Beis HaMikdash itself, it will be something that it's not possible for it to have any end. Like it says in the pasuk, when you get to the Beis HaMikdash, I don't know the title of the first part of the pasuk, but I'll touch the second part of the pasuk. He's comparing it to a tent where you pitch tent, right? What does the word you pitch tent mean? You bang it into the ground with stakes. You stake it into the ground. Maybe the pitch actually has to do with the roof, but either way, when you set up a tent, in order to make sure that the wind doesn't blow it over and it stays in place, you anchor it with stakes. So he says, the Beis HaMikdash will be like a tent whose stakes are never uprooted, are never taken out of the ground, and therefore it will last forever. Okay. And this is the connection between Yud K of the 15th. Yud and Hey total 15. to the Beis Hamikdash Shlishi, ki hamayla the Beis Hamikdash Shlishi shein shaykh by hefsek ulfi shiyah b'chinas yudkei. This is the reason why Dafka on the 15th day of the month we celebrate, or we have a gili of the Asad of the Beis Hamikdash, because the 15th day is the gematria of Yudke, and it's because of Yudke, because Vavke will become Yudke, that the Beis Hamikdash Shlishi will be forever, and that's the connection between the two. Okay, this was a little Heichen Yonim, and now he's going to say a whole other paragraph of Heichen Yonim, but we'll try to keep track of what's going on. We're in the second paragraph of Gimel. Here. Umamshich. Umamshich b'hamaimer, that Rashab continues in the Maimer b'bira in the base Pamim Yudke. He explains this idea of that the Shem Havai will be 2 times Yudke. Behektem hayadu bin in Veschanan b'gematya Tavkuf Tesvav, Tavkuf im Tesvav. He connects it with the idea that it's known that the word Veschanan, Chamisha Asabab, is always in the parsha of Veschanan. So he says that Veschanan is b'gematria 515. If you add up all the letters, it's 515. So Tavkuf Tesvav, in the way you write out the numbers with Asias, is Tavkuf, is 500. Im Tesvav, the hundreds is Tavkuf, is 500. And the tens comes out to Tesvav, to 10 plus 5 to 15. And he says, the Tavkuf says the Ebrashab, 500 Uhei Chasadim Da'arich. These are the 5 chasadim of Arich. Each one is made up, is comprised of 100. And even higher than that, we're talking about the chasadim of Atik. So again, these are Heichen Yonim. It's explained. You have to learn other mammon. And I'm not that familiar with the concept, but basically, there's Hei Gvuris and Hei Chasadim. Typically, when we talk about the Hei Gvuris, the 5 Gvuris, the 5 types of Gvura and the 5 Chasadim of kindness, we're talking about in Svidus, in Atzilus. But there's also the idea of Hei Chasadim and Hei Gvuris in Arich. Arich is already Keser, which is higher than Atzilus. And one of the differences between Arich and Atzilus is that in Atzilus you say the number is 10, and in Arich you say the number is 100. Why do you say that in Arich the number is 100? If I'm not mistaken, the reason why in Arich it's 100 is because in Arich all of the Sfiras come together. So if you combine each Sfira with every single one of the other Sfiras, you have 10 times 10, you end up having 100. So in Arich, this is gesagt richtig. Für was in Arich sagt man, dass der Misper ist mehr. Aber ich frage mich, für was ist... Was ist ein Video? Ein Video ist, jeder ist Rev, jeder ist Eich. Für was in Arich sagt man, dass der Misper ist mehr? Es ist lieb, die Skalalus, das Sfira so, so you have 10 times 10, das ist der Indien.
Das ist interessant, wie geht der Topf das Wort?
Das ist immer zweite Sache. Okay, so maybe not. About Kolpanim and Arich, the number is 100, not 10. And you have Hei Chasadim. So Hei Chasadim, 5 times 100 equals 500. That's the Tov Kuf part. And then the Rebbe Rashab says, we're even going beyond Arich, which is Chitzenius HaKeser, and we're already going to Pnimius HaKeser, which is Atik, and over there you also have apparently Hei Chasadim. So that's the Indian of Tov Kuf. And what's the Indian of Tov Kuf Tesvav, where we combine 500 with 15, that these high levels of the 5 Chasadim of Arich and the 5 Chasadim of Atik actually shine in Yudke. And Yudke you're already talking about in Elamis and Atzilus al Kopanim. So we have that the idea of 2 times Yudke. To explain that, he first explains that the Veschanan is 515. And if you take the 500 and you make it into the Hei Chasadim, and then you combine them with Tesvav to arrive at 515, so what you have is that you have a Ha'ara from Arich and from Atik, from the Hei Chasadim of Arich and from the Hei Chasadim of Atik, in Tesvav, in Yudke. Okay. And this is also why you had 15 amas on either side of the opening of the Chatzar of the Mishkan. The Chatzar of the Mishkan was 50 by 100, I believe. Yes. the Mishkan was in the rear portion, a square of 50 by 50, and then you had an empty area over the Mizbech, and the Kir was there in the front area of the Chatzar. So it was 50 wide by 100. The 50 wide in the front wasn't all closed. You had the kloim, those fishnet-like curtains that enclosed the Chatzar. You had 15 amas worth on the south side. It was all on the eastern side, but going from the south to the north, you had first 15 amas, and then you had 20 amas open, and then you had another 15 amas on the end. So the Chatzar was closed like this, and in the middle was 20 amas of an opening. So there was 15 and 15 on each side. So Chamesh saying Amma lekasif. You had 15 amas on each side. So Chamesh saying Amma hu Yudke. The Rebbe Rashab says that the 15 amas is Yudke. The kasef b'gematria tavkuf, and the word kasef equals 500. The Indian Chamesh saying Amma claim lekasif from Amshachas atik b'Yudke, and the Indian of 15 amas to the kasef is the same Indian, which is that you're mamshech atik into Yudke. In base pamim Yudke, and this is why you have 2 times Yudke. And when Mashiach is going to come, it's going to be 2 times Yudke. So that's why you have ki bechatzer hamishkan yishnei seifayim, because in the chatzer, the mishkan, you have 2 shoulders or 2 corners, 2 edges. Ubekol echad mem chamesh kloim, and each one had 15. Ushnei pamim chamesh sehu base pamim Yudke. 2 times 15 is 2 times Yudke. That's what the Rebbe Rashab explains in his Maimer. So now we have to keep track of these 2 shtickle Kabbalic, or at least Asius explanations, and see if we can put them together. So again, the Rebbe Rashab gave 2 explanations in the idea of 15 and its connection to the Mikdash, the base of Mikdash Hashlishi. The first Indian is that it says in the pasuk Be'emo Yi Hashem Echad V'Shmei Echad, Yi as Yud K, that La'asid La'avay, it's not going to be like it is today, Yud K Vav K Shem Avaya. It's going to be Yud K 2 times Yud K. And since it's not going to be Vav K, therefore the Chatzainim can't have a Yanika, and therefore the base Mikdash Shlishi will be a Mikdash Nitzchi. Will be Kaim Leila. That's the first explanation. The second explanation is, it's not pshat that there's not going to be, the emphasis isn't that the midas are going to be the Indian of Yudke, but rather that the midas and Malchus are going to be Yichud. That just like Yudke is always in union, that Yudke is Avaz, Chachma and Bina, which are called Treinen, Deloy Misparshin, they're always in union. So too, Vavke will be like Yudke, is always going to be Yichud. They're always going to be Bezivuk, and they're going to be always joined together, and therefore there won't be a Churban. Those are the 2 explanations that the Rebbe Rashab gave, and the second explanation already has to do with Atik and Arich. So David says that the connection between these 2 explanations is as follows. What's the Maila in the first explanation? We're all in Seder Hishtalshalus. We're saying that Zohar Nukva, which is the Midas and Malchus of Atzilus, is going to be like Avveim, is going to be like Chachma and Bin of Atzilus. So we're still in Hishtalshalus. So Zun Hem Lamato Me'avah. So over here, Zohar Nukva is below in Madrega, they're lower in level than Chachma and Bin. In order to accomplish that, Zohar Nukva will behave and their characteristics will transform and they will be just like the characteristics of Avah, while the Amshach Sakeser Shalamayla Mishtalshus Bekeser Atzmayatik. You can only accomplish this through being Mamshich, through drawing down Keser, which is higher than Ishtalshus. And not only that, within Keser itself, you have to have the higher level of Keser, you have to have the level of Atik. That's why it says, okay? In other words, like this, you can't make magic. And say that Hishtalshalus, everything is defined. It's very specifically defined, and therefore you can't transform one thing into another thing. Midas and Malchus can't be like Chachma and Binah, because Midas and Malchus have their own definition. This is something that we should all very easily be able to relate to. We can't make that our emotions should be like our intellect. We could try to bring harmony between them, that the emotions and the intellect should be in line with each other and in harmony with each other. But to say that emotion becomes intellect and intellect becomes emotion is an impossibility. On the same note, by the same token, you can't say in Atzilus that Midas and Malchus become like Chachma and Binah, that they behave the same way. But it makes no sense. In order to do something like that, you have to bring down a ha'ara from a world where you don't have definition. It's higher than everything being defined as its own thing. It's a ilam ha'achdus. Everything is one over there. Everything exists over there, but in a different state. With all of the revelations in science, you have, again, this is not from the Rabbeim, I have no idea if it has, and not that I know the subject matter, and not that I know if it matches what's in Chassidus, but you have what's called Newtonian physics. Newtonian physics is a view of the world, of the physical world, from the level of the atom and greater, right? So an atom, I mean, I don't know how many atoms you could fit on the tip of a needle. It's in the millions or billions. It's an unbelievable number. But nevertheless, it all behaves in one way when you're at that scale, when you're at the level of an atom or higher. Things are very defined. Things are particles. They behave like a shtik yeshes, like a shtik chaymed. You go to the subatomic level. So over here, things start behaving in a completely different way. You have quantum behavior. It's a whole other, you have the classical drawing of an atom where you have a core, a nucleus in the center, and then you have the electrons. It's illustrated like planets going around the core in the middle of the electrons. But that's just an illustration. It's not really the way it is. Really the way it is, nobody really knows. But they say it's more like a cloud. Why is it more? It's not really like a cloud, but they try to compare it to a cloud. Why? Because you can't define where an electron exists. You can't define where an electron exists. It can be in two places at once, so to speak. Superposition. It's more of a wave function. It's a whole other gather. And these are not abstract concepts. This is literally the way it is. And lately, in the last decade, we started using it to our benefit. This position, this state of things being in a wave function or whatever it is used now in quantum computing, where you can create a computer with one bit, with one thing that works with this waveform or with this wave function. You can compute things infinitely, not infinitely, but exponentially more than you could do with an electron, which goes, not with an electron, but with a transistor that's either on or off. And a transistor operates more in the Newtonian model of physics. And this quantum, these quantum bits, these qubits, they operate more at the subatomic level. The nakuda that I'm going into, I'm trying to say is that on a lower level of physics, so you have definition. Everything, every particle exists in a very particular space, and it has a very defined area and a very defined behavior. Then you go to a higher level, to the subatomic scale, to the subatomic level, over here you have a whole other type of existence. And mit the mole, things can be in two places at once, and you don't really know where they are. So Ulay, maybe that's it's at least a way of telling us that there's existence where everything is defined, and then there's a different type of existence where things aren't defined. They exist. They're used to make these computers that we already have today. It's real, but it's a different type of existence. It's a different type of existence entirely. In Attic, there's a different Seder entirely. In Attic, you have no definition. And therefore, you could say, by the rules of Attic, which really there are no rules in Attic, or at least not these types of rules, you could say that Midas behave like Chachma and Binah. That Zun behaves like Avah. And that's the connection between the two explanations of the Rebbe Rashab. If you want to bring about that Yudke should be like Vavke, that's only through Chamesh Esrei Amot Kloim Lakosef. It's only through being Mamshich Atik into Yudke. According to the first explanation in the Maimer, what's the Rebbe Rashab describing is describing the ascent of Zun into Avah. Zun is being elevated. That's our point of view. In the second explanation, the Rebbe Rashab is talking about the drawing down of Atik into Zun. Okay, so we're talking about two different directions entirely. Are we talking about that you have to have an aliyah, you have to lift everything up, or are we talking about they have to have a hamshach, you have to bring the higher levels down into the lower levels? Two different inyanim that Rashab explains in his Maimer. The Rashab continues the test for Vav Shaykh Gam Lebir Hasheni Dishnei Pamim Yudkei. Chamisha Asar Va'av is also connected to the second explanation in Yudkei. And I'll try to explain it to the best of my explanation, to the best of my ability. The first beer of Yudkei is not really connected to Av strongly. Okay? Because what's the primary beer? That it's 15. The primary beer is that it's Yudke, that it's the Gematria of 15. That you could say about other months also. That's why the Rebbe L'chura puts Be'av in brackets. Look at the first line of Gimel, Bibir, Hashachs, the Tesvav, he puts Be'av in brackets. And so to later, he also puts Be'av in brackets, the second time he mentions it. Why? Because the main idea here is more the number Yudke. You see in the second to last line of the second paragraph, again, Yudke in brackets Be'av. Because 15 is already the idea of Yi, of based from Yudke, and 15 on its own is already Shaykhis to the Beis HaMikdash HaShlishi because it's not Vavke. However, we connect it to Chamisha Asar Ba'av because that's the shleimus of 15. The highest time of 15 is Chamisha Asar Ba'av, but the explanation itself is Lavdavke connected to the month of Av. The second explanation, where it's Yudke, the Av, where it's Atik, that is already specifically connected to the 15th day of the month of Av. And I think that's what the Rebbe is saying over here. The 15th day of Av is also shaykhis to the second explanation of 2 times Yudke, which is Amshachas Atik and Arich into Yudke. Because it is on the day of the 15th day of Av that you have the revelation of the Heichasadim of Atik into Ava. That's the day when it happens. If you see in Order 29, Harem is Din in Zed, Tesvav Ba'av, that Afghan Tesvav Ba'av, you have the Hamshache of Atik into Yudke, into Ava, which is Yudke. So he says, of Teichne Hugam Ratzin. Of the Teichin of Av is also Ratzin. Like it says, V'loi Ava, Hashem did not want. Av is Melashin Ratzin, which is Keser. The Tesvav, who Yudke Chachme Binah. And 15, like we already mentioned, the Pnim is Chachme and Binah. The Inyan Tesvav Ba'av, who Amshachas HaKeser B'Chachme Binah. So Tesvav Ba'av, in one statement, in one sentence, we have, in one phrase, we have Av, which is Ratzin, connected to Tesvav to Chamisha Asa, which is Yudke, so it's the Hamshacha of Atik into Yudke, into Chamisha Asa. And through being Mamshich Atik into Ava, into Chachma Binah, you're also Mamshich Atik, also into Malchus. Okay. Not sure why the Rebbe adds that and where he's going with it. But that's what the Rebbe Rashab says in the Maimed. The Iker Gili Zayil Asid Lavi, one will be the primary time of the Gili of Atik. In Yudke, that's going to be when Mashiach comes. On today's date, you also have a Me'ain of Atik into Ava, into Yudke. Not only into Yudke, but even into Malchus, Kanal Sif Beis, Shevetesvav Ba'av, Me'ain Hagili de La'asid. On the 15th day of Av is the Me'ain Hagili of La'asid Lavi. Okay, Adkan hopefully will be the Himmel Asius of the Maimer, and hopefully will get easier. Yeah.